You probably know how reflexive verbs in Italian work already, but do you know how to make them past? Do you know how to make a reflexive verb and how to conjugate a reflexive verb in passato prossimo or imperfetto? Well, we're going to talk about that in today's video. Ciao, io sono Stefano and I am an Italian teacher. So first of all, welcome back to my channel. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you don't want to miss any future lesson. I always upload new content here on my channel, and I talk about Italian grammar, vocabulary, and I also do vlogs around Italy. So if you would like to see all of this and always be updated when a new video comes out, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and also to turn on the notification bell so you will be notified every single time a new video comes out. In today's video, we're going to talk about reflexive verbs, but we're going to look at reflexive verbs specifically in the past. I already made a video about reflexive verbs here on my channel that you can go check out here somewhere or also in the description box below. So if you haven't watched that one yet, I suggest you watch that one first and then come back to this video. Before starting our lesson and see how reflexive verbs are conjugated in the past, let's just do a quick recap of reflexive verbs. Reflexive verbs in Italian are used to express the idea of the subject performing an action on the subject themselves. But also reflexive verbs in Italian are also used just to change the meaning of a normal verb. Take for example the verb sentirsi. Well, normally, sentire means to hear, but when you say sentirsi, so you make sentire reflexive, you're actually saying to feel. So that's pretty much it. That's why we have reflexive verbs in Italian. In order to conjugate reflexive verbs, well, it's very easy. You place a reflexive pronoun, mi, ti, si, ci, vi, si, before the verb. So for example, if I take the verb lavarsi, to wash, I would say mi lavo, ti lavi, si lava, ci laviamo, vi lavate, si lavano. But now, let's talk about this in the past. So you know that in Italian you have multiple options. You can use verbs in imperfetto or passato prossimo. I've also made a video on the difference between these two, but in today's video we're going to focus on passato prossimo. That's because imperfetto is pretty easy. You take the verb lavarsi, for example, you remove the final si, that is basically the reflexive pronoun, and you end up with lavare. Now you conjugate the verb lavare in imperfetto, lavavo, lavavi, lavava, and you just add the reflexive pronoun in front of it. Mi lavavo, ti lavavi, si lavava, ci lavavamo, vi lavavate, si lavavano. Now the tricky part comes with passato prossimo, because with passato prossimo you will have to choose an auxiliary verb. So is it gonna be avere or essere? Well, I've got great news for you, because with reflexive verbs you're going to use the auxiliary verb essere all the time. So there is no exception at all. You're always going to use essere with reflexive verbs. For example, let's take the verb divertirsi. Divertirsi means to have fun. So the first thing you gotta do is form the past participle. And how would you do that? Well, you take the verb divertirsi, you get rid of the reflexive pronoun and add back the i, so divertire. Now you form the past participle as a normal ire verb, divertito. But now remember, I told you that all reflexive verbs take essere. And you know that when you use the verb essere, you always have to change the past participle according to the gender and number of the subject. Now, I would say mi sono divertito, but if I were a woman, I would say mi sono divertita. So now, let's try to conjugate the verb divertirsi. Mi sono divertito, or divertita, I had fun. Ti sei divertito, or divertita, you had fun. Lui si è divertito, lei si è divertita, he and she had fun. Noi ci siamo divertiti, or divertite, we had fun. Voi vi siete divertiti, or divertite, you guys had fun. Loro si sono divertiti, or divertite, they had fun. Now let's try to conjugate another verb, like the verb sentirsi, to feel, and let's try to say I felt. Mi sono sentito, or sentita. Tu ti sei sentito, sentita. Lui si è sentito, lei si è sentita. Noi ci siamo sentiti, or sentite. Voi vi siete sentiti, sentite. Loro si sono sentiti or sentite. That's pretty easy. What do you think? Now, let me add just a quick grammar rule. What if you have a reflexive verb with a modal verb in the past? Well, modal verbs in Italian are the verbs dovere, potere, and volere. Dovere means to have to, must, volere, to want, and potere, can. Now, if you're using one of these modal verbs in the past, plus the infinitive of a reflexive verb, well, you have to be careful with what auxiliary verb you choose. Well, why is that? This is because when you have a modal verb, you normally choose the auxiliary verb essere or avere of the modal verb according to the verb you have in the infinitive right after the modal verb. So for example, let's say you want to say something like, we had to wake up early this morning. So here I'm going to use the verb dovere, we had to, in the past, passato prossimo, plus the infinitive of the verb to wake up, svegliarsi. So how do I do this? Well, I've got two options. The first option is the most common one that I suggest you use. Ci siamo dovuti svegliare. Ci siamo dovuti svegliare. So I take the verb dovere and I make it past in the noi, we form. So of course I will have to change dovuto in dovuti because I'm talking about plural and masculine or a mixed group. Then I have to place before the siamo dovuti, so before the modal verb, the right reflexive pronoun. Since here I'm saying we had to wake up, I'm going to use ci and place it before the modal verb. Ci siamo dovuti. And then I'm just going to add the infinitive of the verb svegliarsi. But of course, don't forget to remove the reflexive pronoun si and add back the i. So svegliarsi, svegliar, add back the i, svegliare. And this is because you already placed the reflexive pronoun at the beginning of the sentence, before the modal verb. Ci siamo dovuti svegliare. Ci siamo dovuti svegliare. But you also have another option that you might hear or read. And the other option is abbiamo dovuto svegliarci. Abbiamo dovuto svegliarci. So as you can see, basically, this is pretty much the same. There is no difference. But in this case, I'm choosing to place the reflexive pronoun at the end of the infinitive. And that's totally fine. But if you do that, you're not going to use the verb essere with the modal verb, but you're going to use avere. Abbiamo. And since you're using avere, you don't need to change the past participle of dovere anymore. It's always gonna be dovuto. Abbiamo dovuto svegliarci. So you can say ci siamo dovuti svegliare or abbiamo dovuto svegliarci. They are exactly the same thing. Just remember that based on where you decide to put the reflexive pronoun, you have to use either essere or avere as the auxiliary verb of the modal verb. Let me give you some more examples. Mi sono potuto divertire dopo l'esame. Mi sono potuto divertire dopo l'esame. Or ho potuto divertirmi dopo l'esame. Ho potuto divertirmi dopo l'esame. Ti sei potuta riposare ieri? Ti sei potuta riposare ieri? Or hai potuto riposarti ieri? Hai potuto riposarti ieri? Alright, we are done for today's video. I hope you liked it, and if you have any questions about this topic, just let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if you want to help me and you want to support my channel, and also don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you don't want to miss any future lessons. And also, if you want to know more about my life in Italy and just what life is like in Italy, don't forget to follow me on Instagram, Teacher Stefano, where I upload stories and educational content pretty much every day. I'm going to see you in the next lesson. Ci vediamo nella prossima lezione. Ciao!